Okay, so 1 Peter chapter 3, so we've been doing our study through the book of 1 Peter, looking at the several messages that Peter has got for the readers at this time. So as you are maybe looking at chapter 3, a lot of Bibles have got headings at the top of it, and mine is submission in marriage. So this is going to be a fun one this morning. You know, the good Calvary way, you teach chapter by chapter, verse by verse, you can't avoid things. But there's a blessing in it that my wife's not in the congregation today, so if any of you report back to her, you've had it. You're off my Christmas card list. So as we come to the chapter today on marriage, instructions to husbands, instructions to wives. So yeah, it could be a bit of kind of tricky ground this morning, so we'll see what the scriptures have got to say to us this morning. So we open in chapter 3, it says, likewise. The very first word is likewise. So likewise means everything that we've read up until now as we get to chapter 3. So up until this point, Peter's been speaking to people that came to faith under persecution. And he's speaking to many people in different relationship situations. But the relationship that we hit on today is husbands and wives. And we've looked at this point about the whole attitude of submission, the action of submission as well, and what that really means. That when you are being submissive to someone, you're putting yourself under them, you get somebody in place over you. So that's what we're really looking at today, and it's submission in marriage. It's really looking, to begin with, at the submission of a wife to a husband. But what I would say first of all is this submission isn't something that's forced. It's not a forced submission, it's a voluntary submission, something that the wife does for the husband, not something the husband makes the wife do. To get that out very clear first and foremost, that this submission is out of first love and respect for God, because it's part of God's word, but also love and respect for the husband as well. At the end of the day, what we looked at before is we looked at the submission, masters and slaves. You might submit to a master, but you might not like him, you might not love him, but you're doing it because the word commands you to do so. And it's kind of the same here. You might not respect the person, but you submit because God's word is telling you to do so. And that might go for your husband sometimes. You might not like them, but what we'll see through the word of God is how we get to that point in the relationship. How do we marry up what our relationship is like with our husband or our wife, and what does God's word say, and how do we bring the two things together? So not an easy one this morning. But if we look at the kind of concept of submission, first of all, just to kind of set the scene, we see submission throughout the New Testament in many, many different relationships. We've got Jesus. Jesus was in submission to his parents when he was on this earth, when he was growing up as a boy. He was in submission to his parents. We've got demons. They were in submission to the disciples. When the disciples spoke something, the demons obeyed and submitted to that word. We've looked at in 1 Peter already, citizens need to be in submission to the government, the kind of worldly systems that are in place just now, unless they're ungodly. The universe is in submission to Christ. Jesus was in submission to the Father. Church members are in submission to church leadership. The church is in submission to Christ. Servants in submission to masters. Wives in submission to husbands. And Christians and husbands in submission to God. So it's not just something here that's for wives and wives only. We've got this whole concept through the New Testament and into the Old Testament as well, obviously. But as we get here, the immediate context is a believing wife and an unbelieving husband to begin with. That is the situation we find ourselves here in 1 Peter. So basically, the concept that we're looking at here is the gospel spread at these times when the Roman government was in charge. The good news was getting spread out amongst the people. That wives, women came to faith. They were married and they went home. They'd found freedom and release in Jesus. They'd come into this saving faith. They went back home and their husbands had heard the message as well, but didn't receive it. So they were a believing wife in a household with an unbelieving husband. What did they do in that situation? And that's really what Peter was getting at in this letter here. First and foremost, he's really letting the women know that because they have been converted and came to faith in Jesus, doesn't mean they can just kick their husband to the side and forget all about him and do nothing that he says and think that they're in charge of everything that happens within that household. Bear in mind what we looked at so far in 1 Peter. The last thing we looked at was masters and servants. masters and servants, how when a servant came to faith in Jesus, they still had that master in place. They shouldn't show disrespect to the master. They shouldn't be a bad Christian witness in that situation. And Peter's kind of bringing the same thing to the fore here. The wife comes to faith, the husband doesn't. That believing wife needs to be a good witness to the unbelieving husband. So if she goes back and says that she's came to faith in Jesus, the husband's doing everything wrong, you should this, you should that, orders him about and tells him exactly how wrong he is, and is disrespectful and unloving to her husband, what is that saying about the Christian faith that she's walked into, that she's received? So Peter's saying you've got to be careful of that situation there. Don't become confrontational, don't become disrespectful to your husband, or have a poor attitude towards him, because you've came to faith and he hasn't. So what Peter says, it doesn't give you the right just to go carte blanche to your husband and just tell him exactly how wrong he is, because is that going to win a soul to Jesus? Going up to someone and telling them how bad and how sinful they are, is that really going to win them into faith? And the answer is 9 times out of 10, no, that's not going to be effective. But what Peter's going to tell the wife to do is, in this situation, you've came to faith in Jesus, he hasn't. In this situation, what is more important? Telling your husband how wrong he is, or winning your husband's soul for the Lord? What thing are you putting that in number one position? So back in these times, these kind of Roman times where all these people were together, it was assumed that the wife would follow whatever the husband did. In this situation here. So whatever faith the husband followed, or if he followed none, the wife would follow suit. So right away, what we say is when the wife comes to faith, it's already kind of in the face of the culture of the day. When she has made that decision and came to faith and is following the Lord, that's something that in this situation would be a kind of, what's happened there? The husband would already be kind of out of sorts that the wife had made that decision. And Peter's really telling the women, don't make the situation worse. What can you do in the situation to influence your husband? How can you bring him forward to accept the faith, to see the faith for what it is, and to be drawn towards a faith in Jesus? So that's what we're looking at. So we're just going to read a few verses just now. So likewise, you wives, be submissive to your own husbands, that even if some do not obey the word, that they, without a word, may be won by the conduct of their wives. When they observe your chaste conduct accompanied by fear, do not let your beauty be that of outward adorning, or arranging of the hair, of wearing of gold, or of putting on fine apparel, but let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible ornament of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. So that's what Peter is telling these women at this time. So be submissive to your own husbands. Bearing in mind, are the husbands saved at this point? No. So how can a woman submit to a non-Christian husband? How does that come to play? In essence, the woman can still submit in many areas, but what she can do is submit spiritually to the husband, because the husband's not in the faith. In any other way, unless the husband's calling her into sin or calling her to compromise herself in some way, spiritually or morally, then the idea of submission isn't something that she can say, you're not of the faith, husband, get away with you, I'm not doing whatever you're influencing me to do. She couldn't do that, and Peter's letting them know that. Kind of like how the Christian slave couldn't say to the non-Christian master, go away, you're not my master anymore. There's a relationship here that the Lord has set in place. Ladies, today, 21st century, it's something that really isn't accepted that much. The whole feminism thing's obviously been in the past, and women are independent leaders in many, many different areas in life, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. And the Bible doesn't say there's anything wrong with that at all. But within the relationship of marriage, there is this relationship that the wife should be in submission to the husband. But it's not a fearful thing, and it's not a suppressive thing. And we'll go into that a bit more as we go through the kind of study this morning, hopefully. So husbands are not always nice, they're not always good, but what the wife has to do is see what the situation is like and how she can influence the husband in that situation. Ladies, is your husband always deserving of your love and your attention and of your submission? Always? The answer, I'm sure, is no. Definitely not. I see plenty of nods of the head at the back. But what we're focusing on here is the unbelieving husband, and bear in mind it's the battle for his soul. The battle to get him to see the Lord, who the Lord is, and accept who the Lord is in this situation. So how can the wife lead the husband to faith is the main thrust of the portion here. So this isn't just something that's just in 1 Peter 3. We've got it in other areas of the Bible. Just going to read a couple of verses out of Ephesians 5 just now. Ephesians 5, verse 22 to 24. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, and also Christ is the head of the church. He is the Saviour of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. That needs no explanation. That scripture is quite clear, and it backs up what we've got in 1 Peter 3 here as well. And just again, Colossians 3 verse 18, wives, submit to your own husbands as is fitting in the Lord. It's a consistent theme through the Bible, this submission aspect. And it goes really back to creation. God created who first? Adam or Eve? Adam came first, then came Eve. And what we see in the book of Genesis is this kind of creation order. Adam was created and Eve was created out of Adam. But what we've seen with the introduction of sin, that Eve sinned, Adam sinned, and through that sin came into the world. So when we come to marriage, husband and wife, it's a sinful person and a sinful person come together in a sinful relationship. But God has put an order in place in order to deal with that situation, in order to deal with conflict, in order to deal with situations and decisions that a couple have to make. But because we are sinful people, we've got to keep the Lord at the forefront, or else we'll get to do what we want to do and not what the Lord wants to do. And in this situation, the Lord has clearly said the husband is the head over the family and the head over the wife. Ladies, you might not like that, but what we're going to do through the scriptures today is to see why you don't like that, and maybe it's the influence that scripture's been put, the influence that's been put on that scripture, and how women have been suppressed with these types of scriptures to make women feel as if they're down here in the dump heap, and men are up here lording it over the ladies. If that is the case, and if that's how you've been made to feel in the past, that is a twisting of scripture, and we'll hopefully get to that point today. So the struggle between man and woman has been going on right since the start. With Adam and Eve, Eve took the fruit that she was commanded not to do, so she ate of it, that she denied the Lord's word and the Lord's authority, and denied the headship of Adam over her. And Adam was also failing in his duties, that he didn't provide the strong leadership to prevent Eve from falling into sin. So right from the word go, there's been this kind of mishmash of situations going on. Eve disregarded her husband, and her husband didn't actually take responsibility to be that authoritative person in the relationship. But what we see with marriage is God has instituted marriage to protect and to comfort and to bring two people together in the way that He is going to bless. That's the way that He is wanting it to be. And God's love for men and women are equal. Our worth, women and men, are equal. But it's just in the case of marriage that there's different responsibilities and different roles for us to play out. So it says here that women have to be submissive to their own husbands. It doesn't mean that wives need to agree with everything the husband says. Some things would be good. But it doesn't mean that a wife, because they're in submission to husband, the wife needs to go, yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, yes sir, and agree with everything. That is not the case at all. You don't put your brain in a jar and go and leave it and kind of do whatever your husband tells you to do. I know you don't do that anyway, I'm sure. But what it does mean is there is that submission to the husband. When you come to the point of conflict over something, there's something big and there cannot be a final decision made that you're complete odds with, it cannot come to an agreement with it. That, in my opinion, is when this submission aspect comes into play. Because of God's institution, because of God's word, the decision that gets made is the husband's. And he bears the responsibility for that decision, whether it's right or whether it is wrong. The same as when we go back to Genesis, Eve ate of the fruit handed to Adam, he ate of it. Who does God give the responsibility for that situation to? Who does he lay the blame at? It's not Eve, it's clearly at Adam, because Adam bears the responsibility for the headship, for the covering over his wife. So to me, that's when submission comes into play in a marital relationship, when there's something you cannot agree on, cannot agree on that the husband takes that final word. I was reading a few kind of funny stories about marriage and things, but I'm not a comedian, so I don't do many jokes. But I was reading this one. It's a couple, and they've been married for a long period of time. And somebody asked, how have you managed to be married for 44 years? And the husband said, just my wife knows that, I'm the decision maker. When there's big decisions that have to be made, I make them. She can deal with all the small decisions. Oh, that's really good. That's good you've managed to last 44 years that way. Husband says, yes, very successful. And never has a big decision been made yet. And I think that is very true, that in a marriage relationship, because the husband is the head, 9 times out of 10, it's the wives that are making lots and lots of decisions throughout the daily running of the house and bringing up the children and things. Not that the husband isn't responsible, but the wife takes on a lot of responsibility for that. But this overall headship is when there's the big decisions that have to get made. It's not that wives have got no part in any aspects of life. They've got very big parts to play. But it's when we come to this kind of loggerhead over a decision. So here we've got the believing wife and the unbelieving husband. And what Peter's saying is, don't let everything be focused on your mouth and the externals, but focus on your heart. What are you trying to do in this situation? How are you going to influence your husband? And he says, without a word, that you may win your husband by the conduct of the wife. Without a word. So wives, with their lives, have to show the husband who the Lord is. Wives, with their life, show the husband who the Lord is. That is, the wife lives out her Christian faith in front of her unbelieving husband through her actions, through her devotion to her Lord and through her devotion to her husband. The wife shows the husband who Jesus is. So first and foremost, the relationship that the wife has with the Lord has to be genuine, and it has to be seen, it has to be active. And as the husband sees that in play, he sees something in the wife that's going to draw him to think about it. What is this change that's happened in my wife? And he's either going to come to a decision, he's going to say it's a good thing, or it's a bad thing. And what Peter's saying is, make sure you're influencing your husband in such a way that he's going to come to the conclusion that it's a good thing. That her conduct is going to be so holy, so chaste, so loving towards him and the family and those round about. The husband can say, wow, what a marvellous change that is taking place in my wife here. Without a word coming out of the lady's mouth, the husband's going to come to that conclusion. How easy is it to keep your mouth shut? Not that easy. Ladies, when your husband's doing something you don't quite agree with, you don't quite like, how hard is it to keep your mouth shut as well? Not very easy. And we could very easily flip that to husbands as well, not picking on you ladies. But what Peter is saying here is, ladies, don't consistently go on at your husband, your unsaved husband, what he's doing is wrong, what he's saying is wrong, and constantly nitpick, and point out the failures in his life. If you get somebody consistently pointing out the failures in your life, how is that going to win them towards the Lord? It's not. It's either going to push them further away, or just going to cause their ears to be completely turned off. It's not saying that without a word you're not allowed to talk about your faith, you're not allowed to talk about Jesus, you're not allowed to speak about spiritual things with your husband to influence them. But that's not all that you should be doing, because sometimes words are going to put people off when you're consistently badgering someone with something that they're not ready to hear. So he's saying that, ladies, without a word you can win your husbands to the Lord. But your faith has to be real, and it has to be genuine, and it has to be seen by your husband as well. So the ladies had to show their faith in action, but also very much an attitude as well. Attitude and action. That their life would speak louder than their words in this situation. And that goes for us all. You can say the right things, but if your life reflects something completely different, what are people going to believe? What your life shows and what your actions show, or what you're saying out your mouth? I think we can all say it's when people observe what we do and how we interact with people and the attitude that we have, that is the most important thing. We can go about saying, I'm so loving, I'm so holy, I'm such a great Christian, and we could be backstabbing people left, right and centre. People are not going to remember our words, they're going to remember the actions that we're conducting that are contrary to the words that we're saying. So Peter's saying to these ladies, you came to faith, don't go home to your husband and badger him about how bad he is and nag him and complain and really belittle him so much that he's going to be turned away from the faith. But do the opposite. Live your life in such a way he's going to be attracted to the faith and get to see the goodness in you that the Lord has brought into your life. That your life can speak louder than your words. And he says that by not... Likewise, your wives be submissive to your own husbands, that even if some do not obey the word, without a word they be won by the conduct of your wife, when they observe your chaste conduct accompanied by fear. Chaste conduct just really means kind of free from pollution, free from defilement. As you live out your kind of holy life, your Christian life, trying your best to please the Lord by the things that you say and the things that you do, the husbands are going to see the difference in that situation. And it says that your conduct should be accompanied by fear. Doesn't mean fear of your husband, fear of doing the wrong thing, but really fear of the Lord in this situation here. And that word fear can also be respect as well. You can translate it fear or translate it respect. That when you are dealing with your husband, is there respect in that situation? A husband, we're quite fickle people, us men. What we don't like is to be kind of disrespected or belittled, because we're a wee bit kind of macho. I like to think we are. And that's what really gets us. Ladies, 9 times out of 10, what you don't like is when you don't feel loved and cared for, and the things that you do are being appreciated. Those are the things that can really stab a woman at the heart. But men, it's when we're disrespected, when we're belittled, and we're kind of put down in our lives in front of other people as well. So basically Peter's saying to the ladies here, respect your husbands. Don't belittle them because they've not came to faith. Respect them. Love your husbands. Submit to them and respect them as much as you can. And God's command to the ladies is to love and respect their husbands, even if they're not worthy of it. Kind of back to the other examples we had in 1 Peter. Maybe your master isn't worthy of your service. Be certain to give your service. And here, maybe your husband's not worthy of your love and your respect. But give your husband love and respect, and he will see that in you, that you're doing that for the Lord. And let him know that as well. So respect is something very important for a man. And it says in verse 3, do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing gold, or putting on fine apparel, but rather let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. It says the ladies are extending mercy to their husbands as much as possible, giving them all the grace and the love and the care that they can in that situation, to show the husband, the unsaved husband, the love of God. And what the Lord has done in the lady's life is they're trying not to nag and belittle the husband even though he's doing wrong things. They're trying to show him love and care, and also kind of tell him about the Lord at opportune times, when that kind of moment's right, to share their faith with him. What Peter's saying to the ladies as well is, as you're doing all these things, don't think that it's the external things that are the most important. Don't think it's all the external things that are important, but it's your heart that has to be right at this moment in time. It says, don't let your adornment be merely outward. At this time, when Peter was writing to the churches at this time, the Roman government was in place, and there was lots of luxury in certain aspects of the kind of population, lots of kind of decadence and things. And what we're seeing here is maybe the ladies kind of came to faith and they're maybe getting ready to go to church and things, and they're getting all dolled up, the finest apparel, getting the hair done, the makeup on, the jewellery on, and swanning off out to church to kind of meet with fellow Christians and things. And what we're seeing here is Peter saying, don't focus on the outside things, but what you need to focus on is your walk with the Lord, developing the inward beauty that you have, because that will eventually shine out to your husband and those round about you. This is one of these verses that's been kind of skewed and kind of taken out of place many times in the past as well. But ladies, you're not allowed to do your hair nice. Nope, not allowed. Can't do it. Who's got gold jewellery on? Get it off. Harlots. What we're seeing here, that's not the case at all. Basically, the point Peter is making is, if you're putting all your focus on the external, do not forget to make it internal as well. You can spend time doing your hair, putting on your makeup, putting on nice jewellery, How long do you do that on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? If that's outstripping the time that you're spending developing your character, developing your understanding, your relationship with the Lord, there's something wrong. The internal stuff is the most important. What the Lord's going to do inside of you is the important thing. So in churches in the past it has been said, you're not allowed to wear jewellery, you can't do this, you can't do that, and they're taking this kind of scripture out of place. And what's quite important, or quite interesting I should say, is do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing gold, or putting on fine apparel. In the original, that fine, I'm reading out the New King James Version, I don't know what you're out of, but putting on fine apparel. In my Bible, that fine word isn't in italics. That's not there in the original. That's been put in. So don't let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing gold, or putting on apparel, putting on clothing. So if you're not allowed to put on jewellery, if you're not allowed to do your hair, you're not allowed to put on clothes either. So we can see that there's a lot of kind of skewing that goes on with this scripture here. So what we're seeing is focus on the internal things, the important things. And that is what we really need to focus on. That's ladies and gents as well. There's nothing wrong with makeup, nothing wrong with nice clothes, nothing wrong with making an effort with your appearance. But again, going back to everything that you do, motive behind it as well. If your motive is to draw the attention of men, to draw the attention to yourself, to draw the attention to how expensive your jewellery is or things like that, then there's something wrong. When somebody comes to church, the first thing shouldn't be, look at the nice clothes, look at the nice shoes, look at the hair. It's all about where you're drawing the attention to. And I think that's what Peter's trying to get through here as well. Is if you're getting dolled up for your husband to try and win your husband over to Christ by your sensual looks and your kind of dolled up makeup and things like that, you're doing it the wrong way. Get through to your husband, win your husband for Christ by your inner strength and your inner beauty, not your external beauty. I think Jim said the wee quote before, the barn needs painting, paint the barn. It was J. Vernon McGee that said that. And there's nothing wrong with painting your barn, but make sure inside your barn you get nice things. Your Christian character is shining through nice there as well. How many times we came across a person that looks quite beautiful, really quite pretty, or a handsome man, ladies, not exclude that. You've maybe got to know them a wee bit and you think, no, you're really not a very nice person at all. Proverbs 11:22, as a ring of gold in a swine's snout, so is the lovely woman who lacks discretion. What we need to focus on is what we are like, what our Christian character is like. Have we got the love of Jesus? Have we got care and compassion and all these things that we can extend to others? That if we are only focusing on what we look like, we're very, very shallow people. The world today will bombard you with what you need to do, particularly ladies. How to get rid of the grey hair and the wrinkles and the saggy bits and all this kind of stuff. Some of it's quite important, but other things, in the whole, what you need to be focusing on is your Christian character, how you are following the Lord, how you're walking out your Christian life with Him. If you're not doing that, then how are you going to have this kind of hidden person of the heart, that quiet and gentle spirit? How are you going to develop that in your lives? How are you going to win people for the Lord? If you've got an unsaved husband, how are you going to impact your husband for the Lord? If you're only focusing on the wrong things, the external things, the things that have got no spiritual value. So Peter's saying, inner beauty is far more important than outer beauty. If you're blessed to have both, fantastic, but your inner beauty comes first and foremost. That is how you're going to win your husband to the Lord. That is how you're going to do it. So adornment. Your adornment, make sure your adornment, your external kind of niceties don't overshadow and don't go up over and above your internal qualities of your Christian character. I came across this wee statement which I thought was very good. And it says, people are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out, but in the darkness, beauty is only seen if there is a light within. So the challenge is, ladies and gentlemen, do you have a light within that lets your beauty shine? That lets your goodness shine, your Christian character shine to those round about you? Peter's telling these women, make sure your inner light is shining towards your husbands, because there's a matter of the heart, there's a matter of the inside thing first of all. It says in verse 5, for in this manner in former times, the holy women who trusted in God also adorned themselves, being submissive to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters you are if you do good and are not afraid with any terror. So I'll give an example of Sarah obeying Abraham as a good example of this kind of Christian woman, this kind of person that we're talking about here in this chapter here. But she came across quite hard times as well in her relationship with Abraham. Let's think about how he acted. I've got a vision. I want you to move to a strange land. Don't know where it is and we're taking nothing. Does that sound good? Okay, we've moved somewhere. Can you pretend to be my sister? Got them into bother. Next time, can you pretend to be my sister again? Get them into bother. Let's not take the best of the land. We'll give that to my nephew. These are all things that Sarah had to put up with from her husband Abraham, but she submitted to that relationship there. Sometimes he can be quite, as we read the Bible, in our own fleshly minds, it can seem that the decisions that Abraham made were quite unreasonable, didn't make any sense, irresponsible perhaps, but he was following the Lord's vision, and it might not have made sense at the time to Sarah or even Abraham. But as Abraham submitted to God and she submitted to him, they found themselves in the right place at the end of the day. And that's really what we're having to do in the marriage relationship as well. Do we trust each other? And when a decision has to get made, we make it, and the husband and wife move forward together with that decision. And if a wrong decision is made, then there's the trust that God's going to lead the husband going to lead the wife to the correct place in their lives. Sarah was a godly woman, but she was also an imperfect woman as well. And we can maybe identify with some of the things that she came across in her life. But she, at the end of the day, called Abraham Lord. I'm not saying that, ladies, you have to call your husbands Lord. But what we've really seen is, in this situation, she respected her husband. That respect, and she respected her husband for being her husband. And she knew that it was God first, then her husband, and then her, that she understood that relationship there. And Abraham, in likewise manner, didn't lord it over her. So he's saying here that you can become a daughter of Sarah if you do the same thing. So if you get this quiet, gentle spirit within you, if you're following the Lord, if you're adhering to the things here in this scripture in 1 Peter 3, if you're looking at the internal attributes of being a Christian wife and a Christian woman more than the external things, that you can also call yourself a daughter of Sarah as well. Because you see inner beauty more important than external beauty. We've got a kind of contrast. There's always a contrast in the Bible as well, isn't there? What kind of woman's name can you think of in the Bible that's a bad example? Jezebel. It's always Jezebel, isn't it? That one gets brought up. Jezebel was dolled up to the nines. She was a seductress. She cared a lot about external beauty because she used it for the wrong motives. And that she lured and changed her husband's will and mind with her external beauty. That she was a manipulator. And she used her beauty for that. And kind of in some sense, Peter's saying, don't become the manipulator in their relationship. Don't become the manipulator of your husband. I read a wee thing that says, obviously, the husband's the head of the family, but the wife's the neck that turns the head. We've heard that many times. And again, I would say in that situation, my neck gets turned a lot of the time, and I welcome that because I need my wife's influence in my life. I need her help to make the many decisions that get made. And 9 times out of 10, she makes them, and I just go, yep, that's great. In our Christian marriages and relationships, it shouldn't be that a husband's lording it over the wife. You're together as partners. But as I said, at the end of the day, when there's that disagreement, that's when this kind of headship thing comes into play. So as we move on, in 1 Peter 3, we come to the instructions for the husbands, which are very, very much shorter than for the wives. So 6 times as much information is given to the wives than that to husbands. So we could say that that's because the wives need 6 times more information to shape up their husbands than the men do, or that it's 6 times more difficult for the wives to live with their husbands. I'm not quite sure which way to go with it. But it says in verse 7, husbands likewise dwell with them with understanding, giving honour to the wife as to the weaker vessel, being heirs together of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. So the husbands are told to dwell with your wife. Seems like quite a simple one. But I think bring that to the modern day. Husbands, dwell with your wife. I think what it's really speaking to is be there. Be there. in person, with your wife, with your family. Be present in the moment. Don't abandon your family. Don't pursue many other things and leave your family and your wife on their own. I think that can happen quite a lot these days. I'm working hard to bring home the bacon. I'll do as many hours as it takes to get as much money in the bank. And we can see that our values get skewed. It's all about bringing in the money to provide for the family, but we actually don't provide the time. We don't dwell with our family. We're not having that kind of interaction with our wife and with our family. They become those two ships that pass in the night. So I think that's maybe what we're kind of looking at here. Husbands, likewise, dwell with them and with understanding. Men in the room that are married, do you understand your wife? It's quite a task to put into play there. Do you try to understand your wife? Do you put time and effort in trying to understand where your wife is coming from? If she's upset, do you try and find out why she's upset, or just go, oh well, she's upset, oh well. You okay? Yes. Fantastic, move on. Do you try? Are you understanding with your wife and with her situations? Do you understand your wife's weaknesses and strengths? Do you understand why she's upset? Do you understand why she's happy? Do you understand why she's feeling confused? Are these things? Do you make the time to find out this information in your wife's life? Or do you just breeze on through? I'm fine, I'll do what I'm doing. Dwell with your wife with understanding. Have that interaction, to have the communication with each other as well, which is something I'm not brilliant with. My wife would tell you that. But a godly husband has got the task of trying to understand his wife. And it basically means be caring enough to try and get to that point. Be caring enough to ask. Be caring enough to spend time with your wife when she's down, when she's upset, and try and find out the cause for it and see what you can do in that situation. And he says to the husbands to honour your wife. Honour her. Make sure that she knows that she's valued in your life, that you're thankful for her, that she's appreciated, that everything that she does for you, you recognise it and you're saying thank you for it. And you treat her well and you put her above all other people. That, for a guy, shouldn't be a hard ask. But sometimes we need reminded of it because sometimes we forget to do it. In the Bible, what a husband's told to do, treat their wife as they would treat Christ. That's what husbands have to do for their wife. And that's what we need to remember, not to forget to love and care for and give that communication back to our wives. Will our wives always appreciate that? Maybe not. But the same way we have to do that, not to get the response back, we're doing it because God wants us to do it, and we're doing it out of our love and respect for God as well. Men, we've got to choose to be the gentleman in our marriages, to do the right thing, to be the loving, caring husbands, to be the godly husbands, to show our faith to our wives as well, to show our love to our wives. And it says here that the wife is the weaker vessel. I'm sure that one jars with many ladies in the room today, and certainly in the world today, to say women are a weaker vessel. Here, what we're speaking about is the only way that I can really describe this is just physical strength. The women physically are weaker than the husbands because bodies are different. But then women will say, that's fine. Men, could you bear childbirth? Could you do that? And us men would say, definitely not. Another way we can look at the weaker vessel is the relationship that's in place. God, husband, wife comes under the husband in this relationship in marriage. So that the wife has been placed in a weaker place in that chain, that she has to be submissive to her husband. So she can be hurt by her husband if the husband fails to lead properly, if the husband fails to care properly. So she's weaker in that sense in where she is in that relationship in marriage, that she's a weaker vessel in that sense. So that's why the husband has to love her, honour her, and put her above all other people, because she's in that weaker place in the marriage relationship. And us husbands have got that responsibility to make sure that we are not hurting our wives by doing or saying the wrong things, or taking our wives in a spiritual path that's not correct. And it says that we're both together heirs of the grace of life, because we are spiritually equal. We're saved in the same way. We've got the same God. We've got the same spiritual inheritance. God loves us both in the same way, that we are equal in that sense. And if we ignore our relationship with our spouses our relationship with God is going to be affected as well. And it says that very clear, that our prayers will be cut off, our prayers will be hindered if we neglect our marriage relationship. So to recap, wives, your husband has to live with you in a compassionate, loving, caring way. We've got to esteem our wives as valuable, show our gratitude in every sense, and know that our wives are equals with us, that we've not to lord it over them, that we are the head of the house. As soon as we mention that we are the head of the house to the women, we, I would say, are in the wrong. It's the woman's responsibility to be submissive. That's something she does. It's not something that the husband commands the woman. The woman voluntarily gives submission to the husband, and the husband voluntarily loves and esteems the wife. So if you tell your husband that he's failing to be a leader, and the husband tells you you're failing to be submissive, these are both in the wrong. Do your part, and let your husband or your spouse or your wife do their part, and look to God at all times and put it in prayer if there's something amiss. If you're not married today, that doesn't matter. The sense that we are going through here, the principles are: focus on the internals and not the externals. Develop your Christian character. Develop that inner light within you so that it shines out to other people, and you can affect them and win them for the Lord, not by your words, by the way you're conducting your life. They can see that in you. If you're young and you're maybe going to get married in the future, you've got an understanding here of what it means to be a husband, of what it means to be a wife. Don't let it pass you by. Focus on that and pray about it, and pray for the Lord to bring you the correct spouse at the correct time. God has created marriage. He's created it in a certain way. If we want to be the Christians that follow the Lord's word, this is how the Lord tells us that marriage should be. Husbands, love your wife above all other things. Esteem them, be thankful for them, let them know their worth. And husbands and wives, you have to respect your husbands and be submissive to them when you come to that place where there's a decision that has to be made and there's not an agreement with it. That's what the Lord calls us all to do. So men, we've not to be chauvinists at all. That is not what the scriptures tell us to do here. And women, you've not to try and take control and usurp your husbands. And in this situation with marriage, don't ever think that because a woman has to be submissive to her husband, that means that in an abusive situation, there's no way out. The Lord doesn't call for a woman to stay under an abusive husband. That is something that should not take place there either. So practically, spiritually, we know what to do. Husbands, you've got a task. Ladies, you've got a task. Men and women, you know what you've got to do as well. Focus on the internal. Let your light shine to those round about us. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your words here in 1 Peter chapter 3, Lord. As we come to the marriage situation, Lord, husbands and wives, it can be quite a difficult one to put over, Father, to understand the true meaning, Lord, and to bring it into play in our own modern society today, Father. But Lord, let us men understand what it means to be a true man, to be strong and to lead where that's required, to be loving, to be compassionate, to be understanding with those round about us as well, Lord, and especially our wives if we have one. And for the ladies, Lord, let the ladies understand it's not about that external beauty, Lord, but it's about that internal beauty that's the most important thing, Lord. That how they live their lives out before others is how they can affect people towards the Lord. Help us, Lord, to take the opportunities, Lord, to use our words and to use our mouths when it's an opportune time to do so, Father. To understand when it's a good time to speak and a good time to be quiet. When it's a good time to act, and when it's a good time just to let our actions show who we are and the Lord that we serve. So we give you thanks for your word, Lord. Just help us to understand it, help us to put it into place in our own lives. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.